Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This year marks a very special milestone for us, the 10th BME Early Career Researcher Conference. What began as a response to a gap I observed earlier in my own academic journey has grown into a recognized space of community support and opportunity for early career researchers navigating some of the most critical and often most challenging stages of academia. Over the past decade, this conference has become more than an event. It has become a platform for visibility, for honest conversations, and for building the networks that sustain and advance careers. Today's session is an in conversation, not a formal interview, but an opportunity to reflect honestly and openly on your journey, early challenges, identity in space, and how a chance meeting led to the start of my personal journey. We will also explore the importance of mentorship and sponsorship and discuss the realities of imposter syndrome and reflect on leadership. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Professor Marcia Wilson, who is a Pro Vice Chancellor for Education and Student Experience at Birmingham City University. Professor Wilson is a multiple award-winning academic leader and researcher who has pioneered programs addressing inequalities and improving both staff and student experience across the education sector. On a personal note, Professor Marcia Wilson is one of my mentors and is a long-standing champion of the BME ECR conference. Thank you for joining us and being an inspiring role model, especially within the Black community.
Professor Bernadine, thank you so much for the invitation. I've been looking forward to this very much.
And that's exactly what I want to hear. So when people hear about career journey, they often imagine a straight line. My own journey and the journeys of many others have been anything but. Today is about talking honestly about what it really takes to stay in academia. So, Professor Marcia Wilson, I'm going to start by asking you, can you please share briefly your journey into academia?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a really good point about, you get to a certain position and people think that it's been a straight line. And you're absolutely right. For the most part, well, from my experience, it was not a straight line. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in East London, in Newham to be exact. Went to a very large comprehensive school. Wasn't great at school. I did some O levels. I failed some. I had to resit them. And at the age of 16, I decided to leave school. Really quite lost, didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I went to work in a retail shop in central London. Lasted 4 days, didn't particularly like it. Started on the Monday, quit on the Thursday. And on the Friday, I went back to school. I remember my dad saying to me, you can't just stay at home. You have to do something. Either you go to work or you go back to school. So, went back to school. I resat the failed O levels, GCSE nowadays. And because I didn't enjoy work, I stayed on and did some A levels in the sixth form. And I didn't really know where or what I wanted to do with those A levels. I didn't know where it could take me. And it was a conversation with the head of sixth form. She said, you should think about going to university. At that point, only 2% of the population went to university. And I didn't know anyone who had gone to university at all. I had no idea what I wanted to study because remember, I wasn't really enjoying school or education at this point. I was just doing it so that I didn't have to go and work. And so I decided to study physical education. I've always been sports mad, physical education and educational studies at Bangor University. I was accepted onto the program. Very different back then. I remember in my first year, there was a cohort of 18 students studying that subject. Compared to what you see nowadays. It's very different. So I did my undergraduate degree in Bangor, North Wales, and then went back to London after I graduated, had a range of different jobs, had a lot of temporary jobs. People are surprised when I tell them the things I did. I've had cleaning jobs. I was a dinner lady for a while in a primary school in East London. I used to work for British Telecom in the disconnection section. So when I left, I didn't particularly use my degree. I worked in a sports centre for a little while, but I had a range of different jobs. And because I wasn't using my degree and I was flitting from one temporary job to another, I spoke to my professor back in Bangor. And I said, I really miss studying. I've just felt as though I just wasn't doing, I wasn't doing the things that I should have been doing. And we had conversations about doing postgraduate work. And that had never entered my consciousness until he mentioned it. Once again, I didn't know anyone who had a postgraduate degree, no one in my immediate circle. And he had just come back from sabbatical at the University of Oregon in Eugene, and said, apply to do postgraduate work in the States. You love sport. That is the place to go if you want to, carry on with your studies. So I ended up applying to a number of different institutions, was accepted at the University of Houston. I had a little flat, I had a car in East London, gave up the lease on my flat, sold my car, got a one-way ticket to Houston and studied there. I did my master's degree and then went on and did my PhD at the University of Iowa. And I think, it was interesting because even when I was doing my PhD, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I just carried on, searching, and I was fortunate enough to have a teaching assistantship. And so I taught the undergraduate students. So I had experience in lecturing. And then I just kind of fell into a job once I graduated. So yeah, it was this, it wasn't this straight line and it wasn't particularly planned. It was very much doing the PhD that led me to an academic job. I wasn't thinking outside of that because, I was in an academic department, I was studying, I was researching with professors. And so I was doing what they were doing, and my dissertation supervisor said, I think you'd make a really good lecturer or assistant professor in the States, head towards doing that kind of work. And I did. And I stayed doing it.
So what I'm hearing is initially you weren't interested in education, but you had to do something. But then there was, it seems, during your degree, someone you could speak to that kind of encouraged you to keep studying.
Yeah. And I think, as I say, I had a taste of work and I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't. So just staying in education was right for me. And I finally found the subject that I really enjoy. So my PhD is in sports psychology. In my final year, in my final year at undergrad, I took a sports psychology module and it just blew me away. I loved it, loved it. And that's where I found my passion for education. I say I didn't enjoy school, and that's because I wasn't enjoying the subjects that I was studying. I just couldn't connect with it. It was only when I went to university and, because I went there to do physical education, I thought I was going to run around 5 days a week playing sport. I didn't realise I have to do some work as well. Have to learn some theories, but it was great and it was the best decision I made.
It's lovely to hear that you found your calling.
Yeah.
So you've described a little bit about your PhD and I think you did some teaching, did some lecturing and everything. And then after your lecturing, your lecturing session, what led you to your next post and what did you find difficult or discouraging as you were moving up and up the ladder?
So my first academic job after my PhD was in South Carolina. I stayed in the US and I was employed at an institution, small liberal arts institution called Coker College. It's Coker University nowadays. And I enjoyed it there, but it was trying to balance everything, trying to figure out how to do teaching, trying to figure out how to do my research and get my papers published, just trying to figure out how to be an academic. And also in the States, it's very much publish or perish. But
Mhm.
I had such a full teaching load. I just, I was constantly stressed out trying to figure out how I'm going to publish this work. So it was just really trying to navigate the system and trying to understand exactly what I needed to do. That was a big challenge for me. I
Mhm.
didn't have a mentor
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
was there, and I didn't have anyone to say, "These are the things that you need to do." So I
So,
was trying to, figure it out on my own.
so
Yeah.
when did you come back to the UK?
I came back to the UK in 2000. Yeah, it was around about 2000, 2001.
How long did
Yeah.
you spend in America?
I was in America for almost 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was throughout the 90s, mostly throughout the 90s.
I mean, having an interview just about your experiences in America is just something separate in itself. So throughout that 10 years and when you came back to the UK, were there times when you questioned whether academia was really for you? And if so, what made you stay?
Did question whether it was for me. When I came back to the UK, the first job that I got was in a city that was not very diverse. It wasn't racially diverse at all. And the university wasn't very diverse. So it's it's that issue of being the only one, and that in itself was challenging. I mean, don't get me wrong, I worked with some really lovely people and made friends. Some of those colleagues were my friends, still in touch with them now. But still, you've moved and you're in this city, you're living there, and you don't really know anyone. You move there for the job. You don't know anyone. And so you make your life around work sometimes. And you can feel like you just don't belong.
Mm.
There is nothing there that tells you that you belong. And, this was early 2000. So when I tell people about some of the experiences that I had, you go into a bar with your colleagues and, you wouldn't get served. They'd completely overlook you. It was just not a comfortable feeling. I didn't stay at that university very long. So I just thought, I can't live here. This cannot be my life. And because I was on my own, it was a blessing. I could just get up and move. I could look for work elsewhere. And I just thought, I need to be working in or a Birmingham or a Manchester. I need to be working in a city where I see other people who look like me. I remember I used to walk down the high street and people used to stare, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long ago, it's a quarter of a century ago. Yeah.
And that's a message to people that if you're in an environment where you don't feel comfortable, just move on. Just move on for your own sanity, your own well-being. Right. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about identity and space. I mean, you've
Mhm.
done it already anyway. So how being a BME academic researcher, how's that shaped your experience?
Yeah, it's this issue of being the only one. How's it shaped my experience? It's kind of made me resolute. I want to make sure that I support others coming through, especially people starting out in their career. In my early days, I used to go into schools and colleges. I used to talk to secondary school kids. I used to talk to primary school kids about the importance of education, um, and enjoying education, trying to make it fun. But I did a lot of that in East London. So I used to go into very diverse environments, places that I came from, talking to working class kids who may not know other people who have been to university. And I think it's really important that they get to hear and see people who have been there and know that it's possible for them to do that if that's what they want. So I think, it's just important to make yourself very visible, and especially for the up and coming generation. One of the things, I'm still in touch with a lot of my students, but one of the things that I think has been a particular blessing has been working with so many diverse students over the years. And I know, the feedback that I have from them, even after, I haven't taught for a long time, but I still get messages. Um, on social media from some of my students from way back when, and it's great. It's great.
Smiling and nodding my head because I know
You know,
exactly what you're saying.
you know.
We are just role models to the up and coming generation, to the next generation. And yes, they do remember you. I've had people come back and say, I'm doing a PhD now because you said I could do one. You encouraged me to apply. And you look at them and you think, when did I say that? But
Yeah,
it's the fact that you just implanted something in them that they're
yeah,
continuing. And you're absolutely right. They
yeah.
remember it. They reach
I'll
out. It's beautiful.
I'll tell you something that happened, literally about 2, 3 weeks ago. Walking to work through the ball ring in Birmingham, and someone said, "Excuse me, miss, excuse me."
Oh,
So I turned round and I saw this young man. I recognized his face, but I couldn't place him. And because I've only been here for a little over a year, I thought, I don't know you from Birmingham. And so I said, yeah, hi. He said, "Is your name Marcia?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I was class of 2016. You taught me back in East London." And so we started talking, and he's going to be joining us in September to do his PhD.
oh,
That's huge,
wow.
huge. So it's just making sure that the work you do and the things you say are impactful. He's been wanting to do it, and it's fortuitous that we bumped into each other. So I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased. I'll look out for him in September on campus.
That's so good, so good. So this part really matters to me now is how we met at the BME ECR conference.
Yeah.
So when I realized I wanted to teach, I didn't know where to start. I invited you to our first BME ECR conference. Although you couldn't attend, you kept your word when you said, keep in touch. Keep
Mm.
in touch. I will be there for the second one. And truly you were. Knowing fully well obtaining a lectureship is so difficult. You encouraged me to apply for an hourly paid lectureship, something I didn't even know existed.
Mm.
And I started at UEL in 2019. You started my career trajectory. Thank you. I'm trying not to be emotional here. But it's
But it's with you, Bernadine. You had all of that, you had all of that within you. You really did.
Yeah, but it's just what you've been saying earlier on, where you've said, you're being that role model. You're telling people you can do this. Nobody in all my career up to meeting you had said, "Look, I'm hearing what you're." Because I kept saying it, and you kept saying to me, "But then you said you want to teach. Why not?" And you were encouraged. Never had such an encouragement ever, and you did. So thank you for that. So you attended our first BME ECR conference in 2018
Mhm.
and you said something. Well, first of all, what was your experience? Because I'm going to remind you of what you said and how it's influencing other people now. But what was it like you attending your first BME ECR conference?
The first conference, it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. A room full of students, some academics, who look like me. And that just doesn't happen. So many of our universities are not diverse. As I said earlier, oftentimes you are the only one. You were saying earlier about being the only one. So that first conference was reaffirming, and it really filled my heart for a long time. And, Bernadine, you have created something incredibly special. And people talk about individuals who are trailblazers, and that's you. You're bringing people along with you, and you're changing the lives of school children. You're changing the lives of university students. You are showing them what is possible, and you're showing them how to do it. And so my first experience was just incredible. And yeah, I thank you for that. I thank you for that. I remember it very clearly, and it was a very difficult part of my life as well. So
Very
I
difficult.
really thank you for shining that light.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm going to share this here. I won't mention any names, but I invited one of my white colleagues to attend, and she said, "So Bernadine, this looks lovely." And I said, "Yes." And then she says, "It's nice seeing so many people." I knew what she was saying. And I said, "Do you mean being in the room with a lot of black academics?" And she said, "Yes." She didn't know how to say it. And
Yeah.
she also was overwhelmed by seeing so many amazing people in one place. And when she left, it just impacted her a lot as well. So, everyone's just happy knowing that we are trying to help our community. And in any way, I invited her because she was helping me,
Yeah.
and that was, again, having a chance conversation with her. And since then, interestingly, she has introduced other Black academics to me as well, saying, look, Bernadine, I'm supervising this person. I think this would be a good person for you to mentor. He's happy to meet you, and I'm sure you're happy to meet him. And I have. So that's nice that she herself has been an ally now, having attended the conference. So let's touch a little bit on the impact of mentorship and sponsorship. How did the BME ECR conference influence your thinking or decisions in terms of mentorship and sponsorship and the impact that can make?
Yeah, it was incredibly inspiring. I think one of the things for me was that it renews motivation to change, especially when you see, people setting out in their career. You think about the challenges that you had. I often think, well, how can I make things a little bit easier for others who are starting out? So it encourages me to think more about what else can I do to challenge the status quo. And it also challenges me to think, what can I do to make sure that these environments are truly inclusive? No performative nonsense, but truly inclusive, where most marginalized people feel as though they belong,
Really,
So
really.
it's this renewing of the passion to make sure that you make a difference.
You have made that difference because you attended the second conference. And before I go there, you said something during the conference when you attended in 2018. You were a panelist, and you said, "Stay in academia. We need you." I'll never forget that, and that's why I'm seeing more and more Black people progressing, even BME people progressing up the ladder because they heard what you had to say. The words "we need you" really resonated with so many people, and it still does. You attended 2018 and you did something for 2019. What did you do, Professor Marcia?
So was that hosting the conference?
Yes, you
Um,
did.
so was that at UEL or was it
It
at the other one?
was. It
At UEL.
was. It was.
Hosted the conference twice. So the first
Did.
one was at UEL,
Mhm.
and that was amazing. Just, you know, we hosted it at UEL, and then a few years later, when I moved to the OU, we hosted it at the OU.
Yeah.
And I think, it's important to highlight and sponsor conferences and any kind of event that will change the status quo. And I talk about supporting, people who are the most marginalized, and that's important as well. But also, it's about hearing voices that we don't normally, giving voice to people that we don't normally hear from in academia. And it was important for colleagues, and I'm talking about senior colleagues within the institution, senior colleagues who hold power, to see and experience a different type of conference, one that they probably had never been to in their lifetime. And also, as I say, it was important for senior colleagues to attend those conferences and bear witness to what can be. That
Mhm.
conferences do not have to look like, your stereotypical conferences that I used to go to when I was starting out in my career. So that's why I was really keen to host the conference at both institutions, but also as an opportunity for our students to see Black academics from different walks of life and just to see us all together. Because oftentimes you'll see one
Mhm.
or you'll see two, but to,
Mhm.
to have a room
Oh.
full of Black academics, I mean, students were like, wow, wow. So, yes, I host it for so many different reasons, but, just captured a few there.
Because nobody has hosted it twice like you have. So thank you. And you've even attended as a keynote speaker at later conferences as well. So we can see you're really passionate about this conference, and you are a major champion for BME ECRs. But I'm going to touch on something that bothers all of us. And I'm sure the listeners really want to hear your take on this, and that's imposter syndrome. Even now, I can still hear people saying they're not good enough or feel like they don't belong. We struggle a lot.
Yeah.
Advice, please.
I think, when we talk about imposter syndrome, it's important to remember that this is not about you as the person. It's about institutions that have historically and sometimes, present day as well, excluded us. So that's why we feel like we don't belong. And that's why we say it's an imposter syndrome. But it's more about the institution that does not create space for us to be there, for us to thrive, for us to flourish and be our full authentic selves within those walls. So that's what the problem is. I read something recently and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Stephen Bartlett who said that we belong in every space we choose to enter. And if no one looks like you in those spaces, your presence is needed even more. And that stayed with me because I go into a lot of spaces where no one looks like me, but at the back of my mind, I think I need to be here. It's really important for me to be here. My presence is needed and I have earned the right to be here. So I am going to stay.
It's true. And what I tell thank you for that. And what I tell the young people as well is that somebody has to be there. And
Yes.
if you're the only one, you can imagine how many people you are attracting.
Yeah.
Because my belief is if there's at least one person there, then I should be there.
Yeah.
When Professor Fumi Olonishakin became the first black female professor at King's College London, that's what I needed to see. And that's when I decided, I can become a professor. Because I just saw one person. And now, we're increasing, which is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think people will hear that now and take a different view on this imposter syndrome thing.
Yeah.
So now in your leadership position, how do you show up differently now compared to your earlier career?
How do I show up differently? I feel more confident to be my true and authentic self. I show up fully. It's really important that with this position comes great responsibility. And my students have always been really important to me. So they are always at the heart of my decision making. And I have the power now to make those decisions along with my colleagues. So, that's really important to me. I feel more confident in the direction of my career and I feel like I'm in the driving seat. I feel like I plan and I'm strategic around what I want my career to look like and I go for it. In the early days, no planning. I used to just do whatever needed to be done without thinking about it and without thinking about fairness and whether I was doing a lot more than somebody else. If something needed to be done, I just did it. And that meant that I spent too many years as a lecturer and a senior lecturer without actually thinking about what I want and career progression. Your very first question was about, how I got into academia. But I think the important questions are around, how you navigate your career in higher education. So what are the things you need to do in order to climb that career ladder? And it was only as I was, starting to do that and get management positions that I really stopped and started thinking about, how to be strategic, how to navigate the system, what to say yes to, what to say no to, and how to show up at work, how to do the work. How do I make sure that the work I do is impactful? That is absolutely key, making sure you finish projects to a high standard. So it's making sure you show up fully, but you also do the work and you do it well.
So What do you understand now that you didn't understand then?
Well, part of it's in the answer to the last question. It's about planning your career. I never realized when I started out how important it was for me to actually plan my career, have
Mm.
a vision, have a goal, because time goes really quickly. And, if you don't plan, then someone else will plan it for you.
Mm.
Important words from when? From Alice Sugar. Um, when she was talking about the 100 Black women professors. You have to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, somebody else will have a plan for your career, and it might not be what you want.
You mentioned when. Tell us a bit about the 100 Black women professors now.
Yes, we have more than 100 Black women professors, and we celebrate that, but it's not enough. So I just want to start off by saying that it's great to celebrate it, but we've still got a ways to go. We really do. So the 100 Black women professors is a career development program for Black women academics, and it started off, gosh, a good 6 years ago, with the goal of getting Black women promoted to the professoriate. And at that point, there was 25 Black women professors in the UK. So the program involves career development, but it's also about institutional change, because you have your exec within the university involved in this program. And it differs from other career development programs because the focus just isn't on the women or on the cohort that are experiencing the program. It is about institutional change. And it is really education for those people who are decision makers, and for
Mm.
them to understand what some of the barriers are, and approaching this not from a deficit perspective, because there is not one Black woman that I have encountered who needs fixing. It
Absolutely.
is the institution
Mm.
that needs fixing. And that's the basic premise of the program.
This video is at our university. I think we had about 9 of us join the program. And for example, my line manager now understands, and he'd be the first to put any of our Black staff forward for anything. He's very,
Mhm,
very, very strategic. So I
mhm.
really thank you guys. I put 100 Black female professors now together. Now that we're at 100, what's it going to be called now?
Well, it's
200,
still working.
300.
No, 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 we're shooting for 1,000. Okay, we're shooting for 1,000, and we're gonna get more vice chancellors involved in this program. There are still universities within the sector that do not have any Black women professors whatsoever.
Mm.
And our students need all kinds of role models, all kinds of role models.
Mm.
And so, we're going to have a push this year to make sure that we include vice chancellors so that they are aware of what the program entails, and why it's really something important for universities to consider being part of it.
You're absolutely correct about several universities not having enough Black female professors, because I won't mention the university, but some students that did come down for our conference, for the Black Biomedical Science undergraduate conference, they were saying things like, we don't even see any Black people in our university to support us.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that was a little bit hard to hear, because I'm always
yeah,
hoping that there's at least one. But you're
yeah.
absolutely right. Sometimes there's.
It's just not the case. I remember, I did my undergrad, I did my master's, and it was only when I did my PhD that I encountered my first Black woman professor when I did my PhD. And I remember the feeling that I had when I sat in the lecture theatre and this amazing Black woman walked in and stood at the front next to the lectern and introduced herself. Just a feeling of pride. And it was like, my goodness, that could be me one day. And that
Mhm.
was the first time throughout all of those degrees, I actually thought that could be me.
Wow.
It was transformative. It really was very
Imagine,
special.
imagine.
And I remember it to today. And we're talking about, oh my gosh, more than 25 years ago.
Situations whereby I'm in a lecture theatre and I'm seeing Black students either just staring, gazing at me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, am I saying something wrong? Or
Yeah.
just smiling. And
Yeah.
then I approached them afterwards and they will explain why. And they would say, it's just nice having a black female
Yeah.
teaching me because I've never had that before.
Yes.
So yeah, we are making waves. So good. So is there anything I have missed? Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you feel is important to say for BME early career researchers that are listening today?
Well, I think we touched on it, but I would say one of the most important thing is, as you go through academia, find your people, find your network, find people who will be in your corner because it's not all smooth sailing. No job is. But, the things that we encounter in higher education, it can be challenging. We talk about racism, sexism, and all the isms. It can be really challenging. So, need your people to really be there and support you. I don't think there's anything that we have missed so much. The network is really important for support and for making sure that if you want to, you stay in academia.
So as we mark the 10th BME ECR conference, I think about how many careers have been shaped in this space, including my own. Looking ahead, what gives you hope for the next decade?
Without a doubt, it's the amazing students and the early career researchers who are doing incredible work. The students that I meet at conferences, and also, with you bringing them together in one space. And that helps give a sense of identity of who they are within the academy. That's what gives me hope. It's the young ones you know, coming up and understanding higher education and understanding the structures that need to be changed. So I am hopeful. I am hopeful that, I don't know, in the future things will be different.
Too, that's why we're doing this. So it leaves me just to say thank you so much for your time. My goodness. Your continued support in so many ways to so many people. Yeah, I know I've talked a lot about Black academics, but you've helped everybody. You've helped so many people. And you don't just talk the talk, you actually walk the walk. Everyone can testify to how amazing you are, Professor Marcia Wilson. Thank you once again. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you, Bernadine. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.